Happy Monday, everyone. And as John Parker has already said in the chat, good morning, Early Edge family. We've got a great Monday morning show for you. We got some network stuff at 12 o'clock. And of course, we got Early Edge primetime tonight at 7:15. I hope everyone had a great weekend and a great Thanksgiving. It's kind of the kickoff of the holiday season. Let's see how we did on the recap screen. Too many X's here. 7 wins, 8 losses. So we take a little bit of a loss here. I go 2 out of 3. Justin Herbert not doing me any favors. Will Brinson, 2 for 2. Mike hits his Tennessee first half play. Chip Patterson, 2 out of 3. We'll take all of that. Got to do better, though. We can't do 7 and 8. We can do 8 and 7 sometimes, but let's try to go even better than that. Let's go ahead and bring in the stars of the show on this morning's edition of The Early Edge, brought to you by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. We got Larry Hartstein, a.k.a. the Maestro, and M Squared, otherwise known as Mike McClure. Gentlemen, we start with reaction from NFL Sunday. I mean, I've got a bit of a reaction. We'll talk a little bit about this on CBS Sports Network today at 12. Larry, I'm going to start with you. What's your big takeaway from Sunday?
Couple big ones, Sia. Not to take anything away from what the Eagles have done, winning 8 straight and, being able to run the ball on 3rd and 4 because you have a guy like Saquon Barkley and the way they were able to limit the Ravens. But Justin Tucker, I mean, he has basically cost the team 2 wins already. And I think it's time. I think it's time to move on. I don't think you can continue to trot him out there. Or you've got to change your whole offensive game plan when you get to the 30 of the opponent. And the other big takeaway to me is that Kirk Cousins looks like he's playing hurt. He took a bunch of sacks in the Saints game a few weeks ago, and his shoulder, he was on the injury report with the shoulder. I mean, he was throwing those balls like feathering them. It was like, I've never seen a quarterback throw balls any softer than that. So it said, here, pick them off. So, and yes, I'm frustrated because I was on the Falcons, but the takeaway is, to me, the Bucs can win this division. They're just slight underdogs right now.
It's so interesting. You brought up so many good points there. I mean, I thought yesterday was a bit of fraud on fraud when we're talking about the Chargers and the Falcons. I was taking the Chargers somewhat seriously a couple of weeks ago, but if you're giving up that type of pressure to the Atlanta Falcons and Justin Herbert's going down and looks lost, and we know he doesn't really have a great receiver core, I go from thinking this Chargers team maybe has a chance to do some damage in the playoffs to thinking they're completely fraudulent. You're right. Kirk Cousins does not look right. Atlanta doesn't look right. I think this is really interesting in the NFC South because the Bucs got away with one yesterday and won in overtime when they probably should have lost. Chuba Hubbard fumbling there in overtime. I think they're going to win the NFC South, which if you said that 3 or 4 weeks ago, people would have laughed you out of the room considering their record and their injuries. Mike McClure, your reaction to NFL Sunday?
The Eagles. I still want to talk about him. I've just been so impressed with Kellen Moore and the play calling because he's a guy that throughout his career, he's been extremely creative. And you know how difficult that must be to just sit and want to run the football, but they've just absolutely committed to it. And I like the point that you guys made about a 3rd and 4, because it's really not a 3rd and 4. It's 3rd and 2. They got the tush push and they're going to go for it on 4th down. So they're playing a different game right now and they're committing to it, which has really been some of their problem in the past. So I'm very impressed there. I was actually also very impressed with the Baltimore Ravens defensively. I know that they didn't win that game. They had opportunities with Justin Tucker. Go look at what they did in the passing game and the running game. I know Saquon had a big day because he's phenomenal, but they really had great numbers defensively. So still a pretty bullish sign on the Baltimore Ravens for me personally. And then the other thing, as Larry mentioned, Kirk Cousins not only looks like he's injured, he looks like a 36-year-old quarterback that is coming off of a major injury. And it might just be, what we've seen from Aaron Rodgers. That might be the future for Kirk Cousins coming up. I know that he's not 40 like Rodgers is, but for certain players, there's not a big difference between 36 and 40. So I think it could be time to move on in Atlanta too.
Every few weeks, we reconsider the value of drafting Michael Penix in the top 10. And I think if you're an Atlanta fan or an Atlanta executive, you probably like having him in your back pocket, in spite of the fact that you probably could have upgraded on the defensive line with a star player. All right, Mike, you and I have competing picks. Now, we'll talk on primetime more about picks. I've got a lot of props that I like. I'm definitely going to have an SGP for tonight because if you have prop questions about Monday Night Football, go ahead and put them in the chat. This is going to be a Monday Night Football intensive show, but some SportsLine picks with the NBA and hockey. Mike, you like the Browns tonight?
I do, and it's really the number here, Sia. I like the Browns +6. I project the game at 4, and it's really this Browns team. They obviously coming off the big win. They're on a mini bye. They played Thursday night and get all the way till Sunday night. It's pretty close to a bye week to prepare. The weather, not an impact at all here. It's a very mild night in Denver for this time of the year. Certainly a team that's comfortable in this environment, but it's really about the pass rush. When I look at this Broncos team, the one way that I think that you can beat the Broncos and put some pressure on Bo Nix is getting pressure on the quarterback. The Browns have been excellent at it. It's really just the Eagles, the Steelers, the Browns, and the Lions. Those are like the top 4 teams at generating pressure on quarterback. When I look at this Broncos team, a little bit like the Chargers here. So when I see this, I think that they've beaten up on some of the teams that are beatable. And when they played good defenses with a pass rush, they have not had success at all. So when you look at this particular setup, they scored 10 points against the Ravens, who we think is maybe even questionable defensively, 14 against Kansas City. And then there's the Jets, who, they managed 10 points in that game against the Jets. And then there's one other one I wanted to point out. Oh, the Steelers game. They managed 6 points against that Steelers pass rush as well. So for me personally here, I think there's a scenario where you get this Broncos team only able to put up 17 to 20 points in this game. And that's enough for me to think that Jameis can sneak within this window. So I like the +6 here with the Browns.
Yeah, I do foresee a lot of 3 and outs on both sides of the ball. So, Mike, I buy into your point a bit. I'll get to my take later on in the show, where mine's almost as much situational as it is players on the field. And I know situationally the Browns have the advantage with the rest, but I think there are some other things kind of going for the Broncos here. Larry, I know you've been hot and heavy in the chat. Anything you need to respond to before we get to our SportsLine picks?
No, just saying that if you like the Brown side, you can get an even better number, 6.5, with the public coming in on the favorite in a standalone game.
Yeah, that line, it was 5.5 in some places, and it's 6 everywhere and 6.5 in some places now too. So yeah, definitely a public, probably I think there's some sharp money, I think, on the Browns as well, but that doesn't, on the Broncos, but that doesn't mean the sharps aren't going to come in and scoop up that 6.5. So if you can get that and even the 6, certainly Mike likes the Browns +6 here. All right, a couple of SportsLine picks. We're going to change sports and then go right back to the NFL. We're going to go hockey. This pick is on SportsLine. Utah +1 at -133. This one is at 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time tonight. They play the Dallas Stars. We're taking Utah +1 at -133. Then we go to the NBA, an A-rated SportsLine model pick. We're going to the Nets +7.5. Nets playing at the Bulls. 8 o'clock start. Nets +7.5. All right, we got to go back to football. But FYI, speaking of football and speaking of first touchdown scores, which we will have on prime time tonight at 7:15. Don't forget about that first touchdown score promo, but there's also this one, which you may have heard of. New BetMGM customers can sign up today and get up to $1,500 in bonus bets. Just place your first wager of at least $10, and you'll receive up to $1,500 instantly if your bet loses with bonus code EDGE. That's bonus code EDGE, EDGE. All right, we got to get back to some football, and we're going to do it right after this message from our partners.
Historic rivals with unforgettable seasons meet in a game of honor. The Army-Navy game presented by USAA, December 14th on CBS.
All right, we're back on the Early Edge, brought to you by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. Larry, before you go, since I've kind of let the cat out of the bag a little bit, I'm on the Broncos -6. I mean, I've kind of been on this team lately, mostly from a prop standpoint. I know you have something to say about Courtland Sutton. Larry, I like that pick. I've been on him as well at points this year. I do like this offense, and I do think this offense is slowly trending better and better as the year goes. Now, the problem is, like Mike said, we got a big-time defense in the Cleveland Browns, at least on the front end. On the back end, it's a little bit of a different story. Larry's going to get to that later. But the pressure rate for the Cleveland Browns, #1 in the league, and that is a problem for Bo Nix. Certainly, you see, and this is most quarterbacks, you see their ratings kind of and their metrics go down. But one thing Bo Nix isn't doing is turning the ball over. And so when you get almost an equally good pressure rate from the Denver Broncos on Jameis Winston, I see Jameis kind of reverting to one of those gunslinger Jameis Winstons, which isn't going to work against this defense. I think what they did against the Pittsburgh Steelers last week was really impressive, but it was also a snow game. It was also a division game. This is also a team that has no playoff aspirations whatsoever. And you got a Denver team that's trending upward offensively and defensively. I think it's going to be too much specifically for Jameis Winston, not in love with his weapons. I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball. I'm going to lay the points because Denver's at home here and for all the reasons I just said it. So I'm going to lay the Broncos -6 here. Certainly don't like to be on the other side of a Mike McClure pick, but here we are. Somebody's got to win. We're not going to go undefeated on the recap screen. That's just the way it goes. A lot of props to consider, Larry, in this one. Devin Vele is somebody I was considering from a prop standpoint. You like Cortland Sutton. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, I mean, Cortland Sutton has been the alpha for 5 straight weeks now with no fewer than 8 targets in any of those games, 48 targets in 5 games, at least 70 receiving yards in every game. And you look at the matchup with the Cleveland secondary. First of all, they love to play man almost 40% of the time, which is a very high rate in today's NFL. He gets a 27% target share against man, and Denzel Ward is their best corner. He's 5'11". Cortland Sutton is 6'4", a big size advantage there. And Bo Nix just continues to look for him, and Sutton continues to deliver. So I don't see why tonight would be any different. I'm over Cortland Sutton. I also went over 4.5 catches, but now I'm seeing it's mostly 5.5, and I wouldn't go that high. I think 5 is a pretty good floor, but he's had at least 6 catches now in 5 straight games. So I love Cortland Sutton in this matchup. And you see, even when they blew out the Falcons, they still pass the ball a lot. It's not like Sean Payton is going to take his foot off the gas. He does like to run up the score. They've put up a lot of big wins at home, undefeated against the spread at home. I lean Broncos, but I definitely think this game could come down to a backdoor cover, late drive from Jameis Winston. Whether it succeeds or not will be the difference in this game. But my other prop, which I absolutely love, is on the other side of the field, because I think the Broncos are going to have the ball in terms of time of possession way more than the Browns. I don't think the Browns will be able to extend long drives. Grant Delpit over 6.5 tackles and assists. The other starting safety for the Browns is out in Juan Thornhill. Grant Delpit has had at least 7 tackles and assists in 4 straight games, 10 against the Steelers, 9 the week before. He's all over the field. He plays in the box. I just think this is a great matchup. Also, if you look inside the numbers this season, safeties against the Broncos have produced at a very high level. The Broncos are getting the ball to the middle of the field where the safeties are playing and making a lot of stops. So give me over 6.5 stops.
All right. I love the analysis on Grant Delpit, especially when you consider time of possession and things of that nature. We do have a question. Maybe we can get some props in this game before we get to the recap screen. Jerry Jeudy over 4.5 receptions. Larry, I'm going to start with you here. And Mike, I have a question for you. You can answer this question as well. But any thoughts on Jerry Jeudy tonight? We know Cedric Tillman is out, so it should be the Elijah Moore Jerry Jeudy show. I think 4.5 receptions is kind of a great number. I would lean to the over here.
I would definitely lean over. I mean, going back to Denver, where he started his career, playing against his good buddy, Patrick Surtain. And I think Jameis Winston even came out this week and said, I'm going to get the ball to Jerry Jeudy in his homecoming against Denver. He made it pretty plain. So, yeah, I like that look over 4.5 catches.
Mike, your thoughts? I mean, we've got basically the primary pass catchers are Elijah Moore, Jerry Jeudy, and then I guess you could throw in David Njoku, but it does seem like Jerry Jeudy is going to be the target among the 3.
Yeah, I certainly would be playing overs only. I would not look at unders at all there. I would look at his longest reception over around 22.5, 23.5. And then I do believe Jameis is going to force him the ball. So I do kind of like his first quarter yardage at 8.5 or 9.
Oh, that's interesting. First quarter, 8.5 or 9 over. Larry, go ahead.
Yeah, just one other look which correlates with that is Nick Chubb struggling tonight, because you've seen this number come down from 59, 60, now looking at 56.5. I'm still leaning under on Nick Chubb. The Broncos have given up 3.1 yards per carry over their last 3 games. So this is a tough defense to run on. It's a tough defense to throw on, but especially when you have a team that's almost a touchdown favorite, I don't think it's going to be a huge night for Nick Chubb.
Yeah, I'm surprised the number opened that high. 59.5 is a lot of yards for a guy who last week, 3 yards per carry, good rush defense. I agree with you. I would still lean to the under of 56.5. Speaking of rushing, I want to throw something out at you guys, because a couple of things competing against each other when it comes to Bo Nix's rushing yards, which I believe I checked last night. I don't know about this morning. I believe is 19.5. Mike, what's happened here is that we know Bo Nix can rush. He's had a few games where he's rushed big, but the last few games, he hasn't rushed at all. I mean, we're talking like 0 yards, 5 yards, but this is a Browns team that creates a lot of pressure, that plays a lot of man coverage. It seems very ripe for a Bo Nix rushing game. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would not lean under at all. It would be overs or nothing here. And the reason for it is twofold, really. It's the pass rush that you're talking about. The fact that I think this game could be very competitive as well. That's where I expect him to really take off and run more, is truly with the game on the line. And I think we could get that scenario here. So yeah, it would be overs or nothing on his rushing.
Yeah, and Larry, thanks to Jake the Snake, he noticed that this number has shot up to 20.5 from 19.5. That's not a nothing difference, but either way, your thoughts on Bo Nix running the ball?
Yeah, I would lean over, given that the Browns are number 3 in pressure rate. So you might have, 1 or 2 extra scrambles than you might normally have.
Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, I would say I also think the number currently at 4.5 rushing attempts is pretty friendly. There's obviously, if they win, there's a scenario of 2 kneel downs. So you could get one at the end of the half as well. So if you think the game's competitive and you think the spread's about right, then I would lean over on Nick's rushing attempts at 4.5.
All right. Over on Nick's rushing attempts 4.5. That looks good. Joe Everett says ladders out for Sutton. Hey, listen, if this is a competitive game, I don't hate that. But again, Vele's prop is 34.5. I think he's a guy that you could potentially ladder to. And I say that just because his yardage prop is so much lower. You can get to the 50 and 60 plus at like pretty significant plus money. That's something we'll talk about more on the night show. Larry, go ahead.
Yeah, and Josh Reynolds is questionable. Could be coming back. Did practice in full and could be activated tonight, which throws a wrench into that receiving core.
It's particularly Vele potentially. So again, that's why you watch early edge primetime, because if Josh Reynolds, who again has practiced in full but hasn't technically been activated off IR, I suspect he will. I don't know what impact he'd have in the first game, but that does muddy things up just a little bit with maybe not Sutton as much as the other receivers. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we answered some questions, and we'll get to way more questions tonight on Early Edge Primetime. Let's take a look at the recap screen before we get out of here. I'm on the Broncos -6, but Mike McClure's on the Browns +6. So pick your capper, pick your analysis, pick your lean that you went into before this show. One of us is going to be right, one of us is going to be wrong. But I'll tell you what, I do not like being on the other side of Mike McClure in pretty much anything. Larry Hartstein, Cortland Sutton over 63.5 receiving yards at -113. He is so underrated. Grant Delpit over 6.5 tackles and assists at -150. And our SportsLine picks, we go to the NHL. Utah +1 at -133. And to the NBA, the Nets +7.5. A lot more content coming to you. If you're on CBS Sports Network, or if you're near a TV at 12 o'clock, the 3 you just saw, well, you're going to see them again. We're going to talk way more than just Monday Night Football. We're going to look ahead to the following NFL week. We're going to look at some NBA bets. Again, that's at CBS Sports Network today at 12 o'clock. And then, of course, Early Edge Primetime at 7:15. Thank you for being in here, everybody. Nathan, Brad, Dig, Joe, CID, Big Cheesy, Jeff Stenberg, Mike. Thanks for being in here. It's been a great Monday. We got a lot more coming your way. On behalf of Mike McClure, Larry Hartstein, Jake the Snake on the 1s and 2s, and the Counselor of Cash, Sia Nejad. This is the Early Edge. We rest our case.